I'm Terry Smart from Chestnut Products. Now, one of the most important parts of finishing takes place before you even choose which finish you're going to use, and that's getting the preparation right. You need to get the surface as smooth as possible before you even start thinking about putting anything on top of it. Now, most of that will come from the final cut with the chisel. And of course, make sure to remember that your chisels are sharp. So there we go, we've made our final cut, we've got a lovely smooth surface, and that's very important for several reasons. Wood is very tactile and people love the feel of a smooth piece of timber, but there's even more to it than that. The way the eye sees a gloss is by the amount of light that's reflected. Now, light rays travel in straight lines, and when they hit a smooth surface, they bounce off it in the same direction. So more light reaches the eye, giving a brighter, glossier finish. With a rough surface, when the rays of light hit it, they bounce off in different directions, meaning less light reaches the eye, so you don't get such a glossy effect. If we relate that to a piece of timber, here's some sapele that's been planed, and we're viewing it under a microscope, and you can see the peaks and troughs in there, the loose fibrous materials. It's quite pitted, so we need to get a smoother surface, and we're going to do that by using abrasives. At Chestnut Products, we have 3 different types of abrasive for the initial smoothing back. The cloth back abrasive uses a resin bonded aluminium oxide. That's what gives it the cut. On a cloth backing, that makes it very flexible. You can bend it, you can fold it, you can even put a crease in it, and it doesn't crack the backing. None of the abrasive falls off, and you can even tear it to size and to shape very quickly. Now, I'm going to start on this piece with an 80 grit abrasive. That's quite aggressive, to be honest, but I'm going to do this to show the principle of it. And I'm going to start off with the lathe stationary. That way, any scratches that I might happen to put in there and accidentally leave behind will be hidden in the grain, so it won't stick out too much. So we start off there. And you can see how that's tearing up the wood. But not too bad. We're going to work our way through the grits. The next abrasive is the 120 grit. Moving up next to the 180. And you can see as I'm doing that, the dust generated is getting smaller and smaller all the time. So we're nearly through with the abrasive paper. That's the 240 grit. And we're going to finish off with the 320 here. So we have a nice smooth surface there, almost ready to start putting the next coating on. The next abrasive in our range is our hook-backed abrasive. Again, it comes in 80, 120, 180, 240 and 320 grits. And this has a hook backing on there, which is Velcro compatible. So you can use it on sanding blocks, such as this, and you can also cut it to size to use it on rotary sanders. You don't need to worry about cutting it to a circle. You can use it square quite easily. There's absolutely no drawback with that whatsoever. So for this piece, I'm going to start at 180 grit. This is fairly well prepared already. So we stick that on. So we're using the speed of the rotating item to drive the sanding head. And it's important not to use too much speed, because you want to give the abrasive time to work rather than just skim across the surface. And don't press too hard, because you don't want to round over those lovely sharp edges that you've created. Change that to the 240 grit. You'd probably spend a little bit longer in the workshop than this just getting the final cut ready. And it's the 320. Turn that off. And we have a lovely smooth surface there, ready to go on with the sanding sealer next. So the last abrasive to show you is our net abrasive. It's a blue fired aluminium oxide which is bonded onto a net backing, and the beauty of this is as you're using it, most of the dust generated falls through the backing, so you can keep sanding longer without the abrasive becoming clogged up. Now I'm going to do something slightly different with this one, and I'm going to wet sand this piece using the net abrasive and our food safe finish. You can use any of the oils for this. The food safe finish is ideal because it stays wet that little bit longer, but you can use the finishing oil, the hard wax oil, even the lemon oil would do the job quite happily. So I'm going to apply the oil to the item here on the lathe. You don't want too much. You want to get it wet without flooding the surface. The aim is that as we sand it, we'll remove most of the oil. We don't want anything staying on there to potentially contaminate the next coating that we put on there. I'm going to put just a touch more on the top. And there we go. So that's now ready to go. Again, starting at the 180 grit here, and as I'm sanding this, you should be able to see the dust literally falling to the bed of the lathe rather than going into the air circulating. Using the oil as a lubricant also gives a much finer cut as well, so you will get a very good result from this. That's the 240 grits. Next we go for the 320. The net abrasive does start at 80 grit, so coarser grits are available, and the coarser grits are great for bulk removal of timber. If you need to get a lot off at one time, they will do that very well. This is the 400 grit. Very little dust coming off now. Absolutely perfect. And that's pretty much ready, but we're going to go one stage further than that just to get an even smoother surface. And I'm going to use our NIWEB pads on the next piece. Now the NIWEB pads are a non-woven nylon webbing, and they're embedded with either silicon carbide or aluminium oxide, which gives them a very precise, definite cut. The green is 400 grit, the red is 600, the orange is 1000, and the white, technically that's non-abrasive. It doesn't have the silicon carbide or aluminium oxide in it, but the very texture of it gives an incredibly, very, very fine cut. Now, the way to remember which order to use them in is green, red, orange, white is the order, G-R-O-W, which is grow, which is what trees do before you chop them down and stick them on the lathe. So if you remember that, you're in business. So we'll start off with the green here, and the NIWEB's very flexible. You can fold this and bend it to any shape that you want it to be, so it won't round any corners off that you've got. The only thing you do need to be careful with when you're using it is don't wrap it around your fingers. A fairly light touch, so that just in case it were to get caught, it's taken away rather than trying to take your fingers with it. So that's the green. Red. There's the orange. and there's the white, which really at this point is more burnishing the surface than actually cutting back. So we'll stop there, and we've now produced quite a very smooth surface. But the other thing we've also produced, of course, is a lot of sawdust. And we need to make sure that all of that is removed from the surface before we put anything on top of this piece of timber. And one of the best ways of doing that is with one of our tack cloths. When you buy a tack cloth, it comes in a pre-sealed wrapper like this. So you just take it out of the wrapper, and you've got there a piece of cloth impregnated with a special resin. Now that resin doesn't transfer onto the timber, but it's very sticky, very tacky, hence the name. And as you wipe this over the surface, it will take off any loose dust that might be remaining there. And there you can see some of the dust that's come off from there. Now, when you finish using the tack cloth, you want to keep it fresh, you want to make it last a long time. Get a glass jar with an airtight lid, pop the tack cloth in there, put the lid back on, and it will stay fresh for a lot longer. It won't dry out, and you should be able to use this for several months at a time. Now, if you look at the piece that we've got there, you can see just the start of a sheen on there. There's no coating on there, that's completely dry, but that sheen is being caused by the fact that we've sanded it down so much. If you remember going back to the picture we were looking at earlier about how the eye sees a gloss by the amount of light that's reflected off a smooth surface, because that's so smooth, it's starting to give a shine already. And if we check back under the microscope at a piece of sanded sapele, we can see we've got a much smoother surface already. And we're now ready to go to the next stage of putting a coating onto there. And that's what we'll be doing next. So remember to like and subscribe to our channel. Come back and see us next time. I'll be moving on to applying a coating there, getting it ready to get the best finish we can. All your comments and questions very, very welcome. Please feel free to fire them across. Thanks very much.